Good evening. Yeah, I'm really thankful to be able to be here with all of you, with my family here. As already been introduced, my name is Daniel Johnson. My wife is Anne. She's there in the back, and our three kids are Ruth, Lydia, and Elijah. And I wanted to start by telling maybe a little bit of the story of why I'm here. Some of you may have heard pieces of who we are, why we have some type of connection with you all now. So we're missionaries in Burundi, Africa. And Burundi is a country that borders Congo. And recently there's been a lot of refugees from eastern Congo coming into Burundi, fleeing the war in eastern Congo. And so there's been some refugee camps set up near where we minister, where we're serving. And the Lord, through certain circumstances, led us to planting an assembly in the refugee camp. And now most of these refugees are immigrating to the West. They're immigrating to the U.S. and Canada. And so it so happened that once we planted the assembly, Mama Anje and her family were going there. And they happened to immigrate a few months after we planted the assembly. And so it's amazing how the Lord worked it out, because they had been asking me, where can we go to church in America? You know, we're going to this town called Buffalo. And so it was amazing, because I was able to contact a friend of mine at CMML named Craig Fritchie, and he put me in contact with Aaron. And then Aaron was able to set up, I was able to contact him, talk to him about the situation. And I'm just so thankful the way the Lord worked it out, that some of you were able to make contact with them right away and be able to be a blessing to them, to our Congolese brother and sister here. And then just in talking to them today, they just expressed over and over again how thankful they are for all of you, and the way that you all have been a huge help to them, big encouragement to them here. They said they don't know how they would be right now if it wasn't for you all. So I just want to express their thanks to you on their behalf. So thank you all so much for that. So that's kind of why we're here. Is when we came on furlough this time, I said, well, I really want to go see them, be able to see how they're doing here in the States. So I was able to contact Aaron and worked it out that we were able to come. So thank you all for having us all here today. And a really neat connection I found out once I got here was Mr. Palmer's sister was actually the lady, she was a missionary in Africa near us. She actually took care of me when I was in high school on some of our breaks. So that was really neat to see that connection. I had no idea. But Peggy Green, yeah, she was a great blessing to me and some other missionary kids who were there in Kenya, because my parents lived in a different country, so whenever we were on breaks, we had to have someone we could go to on short breaks, so she would host us there. So I'm really neat to see that connection as well. So this is our prayer card photo. I have a bunch of them in the back if you'd like to take one to remember to pray for us. Maybe if we could I don't know if we can dim the lights in the front here, maybe make it a little bit easier if possible. A little bit about our kids. Annie homeschools our children there in Burundi. Ruthie is in 5th grade. Let's see if I get this right. Ruth's in 5th grade. Ruthie's in 4th, and Elijah's in 2nd. So that's them doing homeschool at home there. I want to talk a little bit about what the purpose of this presentation is. First of all, to inform for the purpose of prayer and praise. One of my favorite verses in the Bible regarding, or a verse that really helped me want to share mission presentations, because it's kind of weird to share a mission presentation, honestly, to stand up in front of people you don't know very well and tell them about what you're doing. But this verse was a huge encouragement to me, and has been. It says, you also, for 2 Corinthians 1:11 says, you also must help us by prayer so that many will give thanks on our behalf for the blessing granted through the prayers of many. And it encouraged me because it shows why I should share what God is doing in Burundi, why I should share with you all. So Paul is writing to the Corinthians, and he's asking them to pray for the work that he's doing, and he's saying the reason why you should help us by prayer is so that you guys will also give thanks when God acts. And so that's my purpose behind wanting to give a presentation, is I'm hoping that what I share here will encourage you all to pray for us, and then when you hear how God answers those prayer requests, your faith will be built along with ours. You see, we know God hears our prayers. When I personally pray to God about a problem, I know he hears me, right? And he can answer. But what's the reason why I want to share that with you all? I want to share that with you all so that When God answers, it's not just me praising, it's you all praising as well. So that really helped me understand why it's important to share prayer requests with people, let people know what God is doing, so that all of us together, if there's more awareness of what God is doing, then that results in more praise to God. Amen? Amen? Sorry, I'm used to an African context. There you go. But yeah, that's my reason. Also to encourage. I'm hoping that this presentation is an encouragement to you guys to see what God is doing there in Burundi. Also to inspire. The same God working there in Burundi is working here. The harvest is plentiful. The laborers are few. We'd ask you to pray that the Lord would send laborers out into his harvest. So please pray for us. Now, I'm going to be going pretty quick. There's a lot of stuff I want to get to. So I'm going to go pretty fast, but I'm hoping we can have a tiny bit of time at the end for questions. Where do we work? That's Burundi. Burundi is that tiny country right in the middle. It's very small. That's Congo, that huge one there. But actually, where our brothers and sisters here are from, they're from just right across the border in eastern Burundi. It's about 10,000 square miles. To compare that to New York, New York State is 54,000 square miles. So we're, what, 1/5 of the state of New York. Burundi is a very small country, but it has 12 million people. New York has 19, apparently, 20 basically. I looked it up on Google yesterday. So you can see Burundi is 1/5 the size of New York, but it has more than half, what the population of New York is. So it's a very densely populated country. A lot of people for a tiny area. Its GDP per capita is $300 a year. It is the poorest country in the world. Burundi is. So very, very poor area of the world. This is the country, a zoom in, of Burundi. Bujumbura is the capital city. My family and I were commended to the work of the Lord in Burundi in 2012. So we've been on the field over 10 years now. We were in the capital city for 3 years, serving the Lord there. But then we felt led by the Lord to move out here to the eastern side of the country to serve him in these 3 provinces out here on this side. It's about a 5-hour drive. It's, 220 kilometers. What's that, 100 and something miles? But it takes us about 5 hours to drive from the capital city to where we live. So this is a very rural part of the country. It's the poorest country in the world. This is about the poorest area of the country. The town we live in has no grid power, has no water system. We have to set up all that ourselves, a solar system, stuff like that. So very rural part of the country. The main things we do, 3 main things we do: church planting and discipleship. We work with the deaf. We have a school for the deaf, and then we do a lot of agriculture as well. I want to talk about church planting first because that's the main thing we do out there. The big picture is, in Burundi, there are 172 assemblies now. So in Burundi, they're called the Emmanuel churches, but it's the assemblies. So you can see that's a lot. It's a small country. It's 1/5 the size of New York, right? But it has 172 assemblies, so it's a lot. But a bunch of those have been planted in the last few years. 55 new churches planted in the last 8 years. So what's really cool is when we first came to Burundi, the assemblies there were really there was a revival starting, and they were really getting back to saying, we want to be about church planting. And so they had a vision to plant 80 churches in 5 years. At that time, there were 120 assemblies, and they said, we want to plant 80 more to get to 200 in the country in 5 years. Now, that was a little bit over-the-top goal, but what was amazing is it inspired a huge church planting movement. And so even though we didn't get to plant 80 churches in 5 years, we've planted 55 in 8 years. So the Lord has really blessed that effort. Now, that was part of our vision to move to the other side of the country. Now, my grandparents were missionaries in Burundi for about 50 years, and my parents were there for a little while. Now they're missionaries in Tanzania. But most of the assemblies were on the capital city side of the country. And so my family and I, when we arrived there and we saw the assemblies, the national churches there, the assemblies there had a vision of planting churches. We said, where do we fit into this? The mission work we're doing is not the same as my grandparents. We're not leading everything. We're coming alongside a pretty thriving assembly work and saying, where can we fit in to help you all do what you feel called to do? So we said, where we feel we can help the most is by moving to the rural part, the eastern part where the churches are much younger. There's a lot less assemblies out there, and help them plant. Because they said Their goal with this 80 churches in 5 years was, we're 120 assemblies. If all of us have the goal, we want to replicate ourselves in 5 years, Lord willing, 80 of us of 120 will be able to do it. That was their vision, right? So we said, okay, where in Burundi are they going to need the most help to replicate themselves in 5 years? The cities, the assemblies in the capital city were quite mature. My grandpa served there for many, many years. He discipled lots of people there. My dad discipled a lot of people there. So we said, let's go to the east. So that was the goal. So now in eastern Burundi, in those 3 provinces we're working in, there are 24 assemblies, and we've been involved in 13 of those plants since we moved 7 years ago. So that's the main thing we've been doing. We've been involved in 13 church plants out there in the last 7 years. So that's just putting them on a map. It doesn't mean too much to you guys, but you can see they're all here on the eastern coast, eastern side of the country. So the biggest concentration of assemblies is right around the capital here. But we've been involved in these church plants out here. These purple ones are new ones we want to do. The ones in white are the ones that we've already planted. But I'm going to skip over that quick. I just want to give some examples. In the last 5 months, we've planted 3 new assemblies. So I just want to show some pictures from those just to give an idea of what our church planting is like. There's a town called Mushubi where we planted a church, a town called Muka, and a town called Runihira. Most of these assemblies that we plant are what we call a hive-off church plant, where you'll have maybe a couple families walking, sometimes 6 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours to come to church. Almost nobody has cars out there. Their main transportation is their feet or a bicycle maybe. Very few have a motorcycle. Anyway, so you might have a bunch of people walking a few hours. So eventually we'll say, if there's enough people from there, we'll say, let's train up some leaders so that we can plant a church where they're walking from, so that they don't have to walk so far. And that's the main way churches get planted. It's a natural way to do it, and it's the easiest way to do it. So this town of Mushubi, this was the opening day. We opened October 9th, so that was a few months ago, was the opening day there. But really praising the Lord. These believers, there were about 30 of them who were fording a river up to their necks in water to get to church. So we said, well, let's try to help you guys plant a church on the other side of the river so that you don't have to be walking through the water. So it took a while. We were delayed in doing this plant. We wanted to do it a few years ago, but it didn't work out. But we were able to do it recently. So this was the opening day. There's the first church service there. This is a quick video of getting ready to cut the ribbon. We had a big ribbon across the front, getting ready to cut it. Here's the opening. We had just done the breaking of bread inside, and then we said, everybody's got to go outside, and we got to cut the ribbon now to go in for the preaching service. So that was what was going on there. But what's really encouraging is this opened in October, and then New Year's Day, we had a baptism there. And there were 20, I think I remember 24, something like that, believers baptized. So that was just really encouraging to see. You know, a few months later, we already had a baptism. We were baptizing there in the rice canal. They farm rice down in the valley below. So that's in the rice canal, some baptism. Another church plant we've been involved in recently is Muka. That was a week after that one. This was an amazing story. We had one of the more mature churches near us. One of the elders there had a friend who was a Muslim. Okay, so it's a bit of a long story, but it's very interesting. So this Muslim friend was traveling to this town for business, okay? And he had some Christian friends in that town who were going to a church that really preached a works gospel and really burdened people with giving money. And this Muslim guy said, you guys don't really understand Christianity. So it's a Muslim guy witnessing. He says, you guys don't understand. It's by grace. You need to meet my friends. So these guys from that town came all the way with him, 6 hours on a bicycle to meet these guys. And so they started witnessing to these guys and explaining the real gospel to them. They were like, what have we been doing all these years? Like, this is crazy. They didn't understand grace. And so some of my friends there started traveling there, and then a couple of those men from that town kept coming every weekend, 6 hours on the bike each way, 6 hours on the bike each way every weekend to come to church. And they said, you really need to help us plant a church there. So we were able to do that. Praise the Lord. It was, again, the week after October 17th. And this is our evangelism team. So we have a team that goes door-to-door doing evangelism. So that was the picture we took as they were starting their door-to-door work. That was the opening day. These are 3 new elders we appointed there at that new church. These are the 5 deacons appointed there. This is some photos from the place. This was and another thing is this was cool too. A couple months later, same thing. About 2 months later, they had a baptism. There were over 40 people baptized at this church. this has been one of the most successful church plants we've done. It's just, they have over 100 kids in the Sunday school already. They have about 300 people coming, including the kids, to church. So very, very encouraging. This baptism, I went to the baptism that day. It was super encouraging. Just down at the river, you had tons of passerbyers coming and seeing what's going on, wondering, there's kids watching on the bank. This was a Muslim man who got baptized. So at this church, 2 Muslim men got saved and were baptized, which is very rare. Some Muslim people will get saved, but they don't like to take the step of baptism. But this was one of the Muslim brothers who got baptized there that day. This was him and the other Muslim brother. 2 of them, I gave him a Bible each that day. So that really encouraged by that church plant. Runihira is one we just planted February 26th, so a few weeks ago, right before we came. This was us building a building. Now in Burundi, church planting, one challenge we have is the government does not allow you to have a house church. You have to have a property registered and a building built before you can open a church. So that's a limitation we have. We can't just do house church planting. We have to actually have a building. So one of the things that I'm involved in sometimes with church plants is helping get a building built. So there we were building. Those are some of the kids nearby there. This is one little kid who was always coming and talking to me when we were there. His name is Mugisha. The road to this church plant, though, was horrible. I was transporting tons of the materials, construction materials in the trailer. The road was so bad, I broke the axle on my trailer. And then I had to, thankfully it was a double axle, so I took off the front axle, put it on top, and went on one axle, and we made it. But this was about, it's only probably 35 miles away, 40 miles away. But it would take us 3.5 hours to get there. The road was just so bad. But then we broke down in the night. I think I got home about 2 a.m. that day. But broke down again. Broke down on the way there and broke down on the way back. But this one was terrible, terrible roads getting there. Just putting the roof on there. So it was the opening day, just a couple weeks ago. That's some of the two elders and 3 deacons over there at the new church plant there. Now I want to talk about Kavumu a little bit. This wasn't a recent plant. This was in October 2021, pretty recent. But that's because that's where our Congolese brothers and sisters go. So I want to show some pictures of there so you guys can get an idea of what it's like there in the camp, or the church in the camp there. So we were, some of these Congolese brothers reached out to us to come and plant a church in the camp. So we went there. This is in the church building there. That's the church building. That's some of their church leaders. So I think Mama Anja knows a bunch of these people. We were visiting there a few weeks ago. So this is the song of one of the choirs there, and Mama Anja's back there, so you can hear her sing. I videoed her singing. Nakumbuka yung nyimbo lang? So she was part of the choir there at the church. Singing about the cross, how on the cross Jesus suffered much for me, is what they're singing about. This is another video of the worship time there. They love drumming. Their culture loves drums. Because our joy will be complete even though we lose everything. If we have Christ, we have everything. That's the song they're singing there. There's photos of a baptism there as well at the camp down in the river below the camp. We were able to do a baptism. That was about 8 months ago. So those are those who were baptized that day. And what's really cool here is that it's in a Congolese refugee camp, but all of those refugees are hoping to immigrate. So we've actually really been encouraging them to reach out to the Burundians who live nearby. So we're actually having a bunch of Burundians now coming, because we said, the church needs to endure even though you guys are transient. You're coming, you're going, we would like this church to endure. So it's neat. One of the people baptized there was a Burundian lady. This lady is not Congolese. She's a neighbor there. And actually now they have quite a few Burundians coming to the Congolese church. So it's really neat to see them reaching out. I want to talk a little bit about some of the different things we do in a church plant launch. We do a lot of door-to-door evangelism. Like I said, we have a team that goes about a week before the launch and goes through all the community around, door-to-door, sharing the gospel. People are very not outgoing. People are very used to talking. You know, it's very easy to walk up to somebody in the Burundian culture, so it's not that awkward at all to go around door to door. That's been very successful. Like at the Runihira church plant that we did a couple weeks ago, in their week-long doing evangelism, over 100 people professed to believe in Christ from that work that they were doing, just from 1 week of doing door-to-door there. And then they did a children's ministry day on Saturday, and you had 90 kids accept Christ at that. So it's been very, very successful doing that. We also do film evangelism, where very few people have, and now there are more people getting smartphones now, but most people don't see things on a screen that much. So if you can put up like the Jesus film or show some Christian choir songs first to draw crowds, and then you show the Jesus film and other Christian films, and then we have guys live translating them into Kirundi. It's very, very successful too with helping people know Christ. So we do that as well. Then we do a lot of seminars, teaching at these new church plants too. So this is some photos of door to door. You can see they're just sitting outside someone's hut, sharing the gospel with them. It's another picture. Someone's house, just standing outside someone's house, sharing the gospel with them, so sitting around. This is filmed the evangelism team again recently, a couple weeks ago. This is our setup for film evangelism. So we just put up a screen. We have a little projector, computer, little soundboard, a couple speakers. You can draw a crowd of 500-600 people, typically, to come and watch. So it's a very great way to be able to reach a lot of people. And obviously, we start in the evening and go till about 9 p.m. usually, and at 10 p.m., showing different films. We do a lot of seminars. That's something we're really focusing on this year. We've planned 22 seminar trips. We're going to 22 different assemblies around us nearby and doing 2 days of seminars with all the different groups of the church, just to try to really go back and build up or disciple more a lot of these church plants. We've been planting a lot of churches recently, so that's something we're really focusing on this year. We're also going to keep planting, but we're trying to go back and do a lot of teaching at these young churches. So you can pray for that. One other thing we're involved is Timothy Bible School. We have a school down in the capital city, so again, 5 hours away, but I teach some courses there. There's some other missionaries who teach there, but most of the teaching is done by more mature Burundian brothers from the city. It's a pretty intense school. We don't require it for someone who wants to be an elder, but we highly encourage it for people who are in leadership. Anybody who's already an elder as well in our assemblies, we try to encourage them to go. The main reason is because there's so few resources. There's so few resources in our language there in Burundi that the school really helps ground people in good doctrine, good theology. It's very intensive, so it's level 1 is 4 months of training. They're studying 6 hours a day for 1 month at a time. Then they go home and they come back again for another month and go home. So it's really intense. And then we have a level 2, which is another 4 months. So we're trying to get everybody through. I mean, we have tons of church elders, 172 assemblies, so there's a lot. But it's been a really good way to really try to help build up leadership in the assemblies in Burundi. So I teach a few courses there. Right now I'm trying to reduce my courses. I was teaching 5 or 6 courses. Now I'm teaching 3 because I don't have as much time to go down, but I'm handed off a couple courses to some of the Burundian brothers. So yeah, that was at our recent graduation. They love ceremony, so we had gowns and everything. Even though we're not like officially recognized or anything with the government, but they love the ceremony of that. So that was graduation day. That's my brother. My brother is also a missionary in Burundi, in the capital city, Jesse. So they're 5 hours away from us. We're also involved in Emmaus correspondence courses. So we have an office there. We just set up a nice new office. Those are some of the brothers who are involved with us. That's another missionary there in Burundi, co-worker of ours. But he's also in the city with my brother. His name is Jeremy Bassett. They're from Wisconsin. Commended from there. There's some of our Emmaus course books. That's the new building we built. A really cool program I do a lot of is helping people get Bibles. So it's the poorest country in the world. A lot of people don't have cash. So but I don't want to give away Bibles for free because I want people to value it, right? I don't want people just to hand them a Bible and they're not going to see the value of it. So what I do is I give it to people at half price, basically, and I say, even if you don't have money, we have a big farm, so we have a lot of people doing manual labor. If you don't have the money, come and work for 2 days. So a Bible is typically 4 to 5 days of labor. What you would make in 4 to 5 days, you could buy a Bible. So I say work for 2 days, go home with a Bible. So I've given away hundreds of Bibles this way, getting Bibles into the hands of Christians. So that's something I really love doing. So these are just some of the pictures of some of the people. Those are hymn books as well. I'll say work for 2 days for the Bible, 1 day for the hymn book. You get both of them, go home. So these are some young people who got Bibles recently, some other Christians there. Old and young, getting Bibles through that. So giving away hundreds that way. We also have a literacy program that we're not that directly involved in, but literacy is very low, so we're trying to help adults learn to read as well so they can read their Bibles. The second thing we're involved in is our work with the deaf. I want to move on to talking about that. I never dreamed that I would work with deaf, but when we got to Eastern Burundi 7.5 years ago, the mayor of the town, when I went to say hi to him, because we're the only white person living within a couple hours drive of there, so I had to go say hi to the government guys. And he told me, you know, we have a lot of deaf people around here, because he heard that the assemblies have a deaf school that my dad helped start in the 80s back in the city. And he said, so we have a lot of deaf people in our district here. I said, oh, okay. So then I started doing some research. And within like a 10-mile radius or something of our house, I found 50 deaf kids. Now what's crazy is there's nobody helping them. The government doesn't have any system to teach them sign language. They're just outcasts of society. So you have these deaf people who have no language. They've never learned sign language. They may have worked out a few signs, basic signs with their parents growing up, but they cannot clearly express themselves. No, consistent language. No one can talk to them, right? So what burdened me is I was like, wait a minute, these people are an unreached people group. Like, how can you tell these deaf kids the gospel? You can't. There's no way to communicate with them, right? So that was a huge burden to me, and I said, we got to do something about this. I don't know sign language. Even now, I don't know a lot of sign language, but I said, we got to do something. So thankfully, because my dad had started a school in the city, we were able to get permission from the government pretty quick to start a school. We just said, we'll open a branch of the existing one. And then we were able to train up teachers pretty quick at the other deaf school. And so we started in 2018 with about 40 deaf kids, because not all those ones could come to school. We can only take deaf kids who their only problem is deafness. If they have like some other mental problem as well, at this point we can't help them. But there's tons of deaf kids who their only issue is being deaf. And so we started 2018, and the work has just grown. It's been amazing. So now we are in our 5th year of school. We're teaching 4th grade. We have kindergarten. 219 deaf kids now at our school, just in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. And so we're adding a grade every year. And what we're doing is, so all around us, because we're in the poorest country, again, people like to ask, why are there so many deaf? Because we're in the poorest country, the medical care is really bad, and we're in the poorest area, so it's super, super bad there. So most of the deafness is from disease, people having meningitis when they're little, or the mom being sick, and the baby still in the womb becoming deaf because of that. So some are born deaf, some are deaf because of childhood illnesses. But that's the main reason, just the lack of medical care. So what we'll do is we've been traveling around to all the districts around us. Every year we'll pick another area and say, let's go find the deaf kids there. Because we've tried to put out announcements, but they don't work, because people are ashamed of having a deaf child. So they don't want people to know they have a deaf child. They're not going to actively go out and try to help the deaf child. They think the deaf child's stupid, can't do anything. And so they think that their family's been cursed because they have a deaf child. So we basically have to go from house to house almost looking for deaf kids. And then when you find them, you have to say, well, is this kid capable of coming to school? If they are, then you have to convince their parents. This child can go to school. They're smart. This can this can work. And so that's a big process of what we're doing. So we've researched probably about 2/3 of our side of the country already, but we're continuing to research every year. And this year we had to turn kids away. We had too many trying to come to school. So our incoming class this year was, I think, 50-something children. So we're adding 1 grade per year. 4 dorm parents. We have 11 teachers, 4 cooks, 5 other staff. There's a picture of our staff. Really thankful for them at the school. These are some pictures of the kids. I'm just going to go through them quick. This is flag raising every morning. They go out. They sign the national anthem every morning. They sing it in sign language. Just some photos of that, lining up in the morning. This is in the classroom. Just some photos from the classroom here. So it's really hard. They're really smart because they're coming to school not knowing any language. So they're Burundian, but they don't know the language of Burundi. They're not really Burundian, right? Because they've never learned Kirundi, which is the local language. Their parents speak Kirundi. The kids don't speak Kirundi. So they come, we teach them sign language. Once they learn sign language, then we start to teach them the alphabet, right? So they can learn to start reading and writing slowly. Once they learn to read and write, their world changes because suddenly they can start communicating with their parents. When they go home, they can, if their parents know how to read, they can write what they want to tell their parents. Even if their parents don't know sign language, they can write stuff out. This is the first time in their life they've been able to talk to their parents. It's crazy. These kids come to school, they don't know their own name. They've never heard their name. No one's been able to ever tell them who they are. So we had some situations where we've had kids come with someone else without their parents. They show up. We don't know who they are. We don't know their name. No one can tell us how old they are, who their parents are. We've had a couple times where we had to wait till vacation, and thankfully the parent came to get them, and we were able to register them. We're like, how can you know? Like, there's no way to ask them. They've never learned to communicate until they come to school. So we're teaching them their own name. That's crazy. But the joy at the school is incredible because you have some of these people coming are like 19, 18. They've been their whole life, never been able to express themselves. And suddenly they're given the tools to be able to communicate, and their life just completely changes. Suddenly, they're able to have friends. They're able to express themselves. They're able to be talked to. It's amazing. Anyway, talking about language, they're learning, the primary language is Kirundi, but they're also learning French, Swahili, and English in school. So they're learning 5 languages, sign language, all those 5 languages. What's amazing is the third year exams we took last fall, early summer, we took the exams. We were the top scoring school in our district for 3rd grade. And the government couldn't believe it. They were like, how do these deaf kids, how are they beating all these hearing kids? Well, the main reason is because we're feeding, it's a boarding school, so we're feeding these kids 3 meals a day, and we actually have teachers who care about them, who are actually helping them. And a lot of them are older, so we have, 19-year-olds in 1st grade or 17-year-olds in 1st grade, some of them. But it's amazing to see the changes in their life because of that. So this is just some more photos of the school. This is our chapel building where they meet to do chapel every week, a couple times. This is our school facilities. So we have 4 dorms. This was our initial dorm, boys, girls on that side, boys on this side. This older roof here. We recently added a 2nd dorm because we have so many kids. The reason why we do boarding school, a few of them could walk home, but they finally found their people, right? Their community, their tribe, you could call it, because they say the deaf are the most isolated people, even more than blind. Blind can learn culture from language, right? The deaf are completely isolated from their culture in general, except for the few things they get from sight, right? So when they come to school, they actually finally find themselves. They finally find their people, their community, right? So they love being at school. A lot of them do not like going home on vacation. One, they don't eat half as well. They don't sleep half as well. They don't have any friends, right? So being at school, they love being there. Then we have 8 classrooms, normal classrooms down here. We're actually in the process of building a multi-story building, which is this one. We still have to put another 2 stories on there. But Lord willing, we'll have 12 more classrooms there. And then some offices, a computer lab, and a library, which were needed to meet the requirements of the school, government requirements. Then we have a dining hall here, chapel building there, kitchen over here. So yeah, that's our facility. This is the multi-story building we're working on right now. Got the 1st level, started to finish out the 1st level. The 2nd level, not yet. We just poured the slab a couple weeks before we came to the States, so maybe 3 weeks ago. Yeah, this is another angle of it. We have a soccer field down here we've made for the school. One of the key parts of the work, again, is discipling these deaf kids. That's the reason why we started the school, because we wanted these kids to be able to have the opportunity to hear the gospel. So we've had 140 of those 219 baptized so far. So what's really cool is we have a local church right there that I've been part of the eldership there for 3 years. But all the deaf kids come to church. A lot of them are Muslim. They come to church. The smaller ones go to Sunday school. But when there's interest in being baptized, we are able to invite this man named Noel, who is a good friend of my dad. He served with my dad many years, discipled by my dad. He's worked at the deaf school in the city for a long time, and he's been an elder in church for a long time. So it's great because when we want to baptize some deaf kids, what we do is we have him come up. He'll come and do an intensive couple days of really working through the gospel, trying to help to make sure these kids know what they're doing, know what baptism is, really do some more intensive discipleship with them, explaining those things before then we'll organize baptism. We'll usually line it up with a baptism at the church for hearing people as well. But really thankful for that. That was a recent baptism at our river down below our property there. This is some of the kids who were baptized, I think, last year. One of the other things we're doing with the deaf is we're doing trade training. So we realized that if you find a deaf kid who's 20 years old, for example, he doesn't know sign language. He has to come and start in kindergarten, right? And we want to eventually get to high school, but for like a 20-year-old starting kindergarten, he's going to be 32 by the time, or 33 by the time he's done high school. Some of them aren't going to want to do that. They're going to want to move on with their life. So my goal is, let's get all the kids through 6th grade so they at least know basic math, writing, reading. But then we want to send them home with something, some skill. We don't just want to send them home like that. So we're doing trade training. We have 20 deaf kids learning carpentry. So we're teaching them, and we're making stuff for the school usually. We're making chairs, desks, beds, benches, all the benches for the chapel building they made, all their desks they made, their chairs, all that kind of stuff. So that's been fun teaching them. We just got a planer machine really recently. The safety might not be up to American standards, but it's great to have. We're mostly using hand tools though. You can see they're planing, making desks there. So we have a hanger we set up there where they're teaching them. That's the teacher, the main carpentry teacher. I found the best carpenter in town, and I hired him. I said, okay, you come teach our deaf kids. So he's there most days in the afternoons teaching the deaf. So they'll be studying in the morning, and most of the kids go back for afternoon study time. Those who are on the trade program go and do trade training in the afternoon. So like I said, we have 20. This is a slab table we're working on recently. They planed all that by hand. It's huge. I was showing Mr. Palmer some pictures of how they were splitting it, but it took them about a week hand planing that big table. But then we have 2 boys learning welding. The reason why we don't have a lot learning welding is because there's not as much welding work to do, and we only have 1 welding machine, so it's hard to train a lot of people at welding. So we have 2 guys, and they've gotten really good. Like they're making windows for that new multi-story building, the first level. So we've taught them how to make doors and windows and stuff like that with welding. Then we have, this year we started sewing. So we have 8 young ladies learning sewing. They have just foot pedal machines. They've been making curtains, fixing students' clothes, stuff like that. So that's one other trade training we've been doing. So again, the goal is to get them out. Once they finish 6th grade, those who want to move on with their life can go with some type of trade skill. So the way we run the school is through sponsorship. So I said we had 219 kids. We have about 60, I think it's 62 kids with no sponsors. So if you're interested in sponsoring a kid, I have, there's a ministry in Virginia, Lynchburg, that was already doing sponsorship in Burundi, and so they, for free, just agreed to handle all of that for me. So that's been great. I didn't have time to start a sponsorship program, so if you're interested in sponsoring one of them, I have a folder in the back with a little bit of information about each kid that still needs a sponsor. Sponsorship, we try to find 2 sponsors at $30 a month to sponsor them, and that pays for the food, feeding the kids, medical, paying the teachers and the staff. We don't charge any of the kids anything because, again, it's the poorest country in the world, and most people can't even send their hearing kids to school. And so for them to send their deaf kids to school, we'd basically have no kids at school. So that's the way we do that. I want to end by talking a bit about agriculture. We have about, I'm trying to think, 30-something hectares, which I think is what? And then we have another big area. We do a lot of farming. We have quite a bit of land out there. One of the things we do to try to stretch the sponsorship money is we actually use some of that for the farming, paying people to farm. So this is our rice harvest recently. They're harvesting by hand with sickles. This is a new area down below where we just finished buying up and getting ready. This is where we plant a lot of rice. Rice is one of the main staples we use at the school. This is probably about 4 acres maybe, planting rice. There's people farming. We grow a lot of stuff. We grow sunflower. We grow tons of vegetables down in the valley. So we have all of our fresh vegetables for the school. We're growing right there. We grow palm trees for oil. That's the main cooking oil we use. Recently I've been doing a coffee project. So Burundi has great altitude for coffee, Arabica coffee. So I just recently put in 1,000 coffee plants there. That's them before we were planting them. But they're doing pretty good now. You know, they've gotten a bit high. I have a few that are already mature near our house. So we have, that's one thing we're doing, kind of trying to do as a cash crop on the side to help the school. There's potato harvest. We grow a lot of different stuff to try to help the school. We grow a lot of grains, so that's millet we're growing there. We grow sorghum. We grow things like that. We grow a lot of pineapple. That's getting a bunch of pineapple plants to plant for fruit. We have a lot of animals. We got pigs. We got cows, sheep, goats, ducks, turkeys, geese, goats, cows again, donkeys. Yeah, lots of different animals. But those are some prayer requests I have up here. And then we can take some questions for the rest of the time. You can pray for the church planting efforts. Again, new church properties. Property is quite expensive in Burundi because it's a very densely populated country. Relatively speaking to America, it's not that expensive, but for Burundians, percentage-wise, it's pretty expensive. So one of the things I try to help with is these church plants is trying to get properties, because that's usually a big obstacle. You can pray the Lord continue to provide as we plant. We have plans. We have 2 properties already we're going to be planting on hopefully this year or next year. And then we have about 4 different areas we want to plant in that we haven't been able to get properties yet. Construction is a big cost to us when we're planting these churches. Leadership training, doing these seminars, sending people to Bible school, doing the seminars, film evangelism, door to door. You can pray for all of that effort as we've been averaging 2 to 3 church plants a year, so you can continue to pray for that. The deaf school, you can pray for the work of discipling these children. That's what it's all about. That's the reason why the school exists, is to be able to help these children who are unreached to be able to hear the gospel. You can pray for the research we do every year to find more kids, that the Lord would help us find these kids. Some of the stories are really sad. Sometimes we can find a kid, we can tell the parents about the school, and a month later when it comes time to come to school, the parents will say no, or we can't find the parents again. They've moved, no contact. It's difficult. It's really sad when that happens. You can pray the Lord will continue to provide sponsors for the school so we continue to have the kids at school. The price of inflation has happened, I know in America, but where we are, inflation has been terrible. In the past 6 months, the price of food has doubled in Burundi, so everybody is already struggling even more. Right now there's a lot of hunger and famine in Burundi because right now it's planting time, so any food they had left, they've stuck in the ground as seed, and they don't have anything to eat right now, so it's a big problem. You can continue to pray for construction for the school. We've been able to get the building to that point, but we are not able to go on yet. So you can pray the Lord provides for us to continue to put the next floor on the building so we can hopefully get all of the facility built that we need for the school. So those are some prayer requests. If you guys have any questions, welcome for questions. I love questions, so sorry I was talking so fast.